Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our 45th anniversary panel, Global Mission, Then, Now, and in the Future. We're excited to have you with us here today. For those of you I haven't yet had the privilege to meet, my name is Karen Bortvedt Estrada. I am a returned Maryknoll missioner. I served in Phnom Penh, Cambodia for 3.5 years and now work for Maryknoll missioners here in the United States. And I am also going to be serving as the moderator for our panel here today. So thank you so much for being with us. Maryknoll missioners began in a formal way 45 years ago, and that's what we're here to celebrate. In that time, or since we started, we've had nearly 700 adults serve as Maryknoll missioners around the world, and we are lucky to have 5 of those individuals with us today. Before I introduce you to them, we would love to know who is here watching with us. Since we are celebrating our anniversary, what I'm going to ask you to do if you're watching is in the comment box, let us know how long you have been a part of Maryknoll missioners or how long you've been connected with us. We'll see who's been with us for the longest, who's on the call today. For some of you, this may be the first time you've connected with Maryknoll missioners, so welcome to our community. Now, I would like to introduce our fantastic panelists that we have with us here today. First is Juan Gomez, who is from the class of 2014. Juan lives and works in a rural indigenous community called Tacopaya in Bolivia. That's about 4 hours from Cochabamba for those who know that city. At Colegio San Juan Bosco, Juan teaches computer classes, he coaches sports teams, he leads critical thinking workshops, a faith youth group, life skills workshops and programs, mentors and accompanies his students. Prior to his ministry in Bolivia, Juan lived and worked in El Salvador in a rural community called San Francisco, where people make a living as subsistence farmers. Welcome, Juan, and thank you for being with us today.
Hi, thank you for having me here.
Next up, as we're traveling back in time here, is Flávio Rocha, who joined Maryknoll missioners in 2003 and ministers in the area of water rights, holistic health, theater of the oppressed, and environmental activism. Flávio was raised in the northeast of Brazil and holds doctorate and postdoctorate degrees with a focus on water privatization. After 8 years in Sao Paulo, he, his wife Kathy, and their daughter Maya returned to the northeast to serve as Maryknoll missioners in João Pessoa. Welcome, Flávio.
Thank you, Karen, and hi to everyone who is with us this morning.
Next, as we travel back to the 90s, some great years there, Wynnie-Fred Victor Hinds joined Maryknoll missioners in 1994 and served in Venezuela. After returning to the United States, she has continued to work for justice, and in August of 2019, she was one of the 2 first recipients of our annual Bishop McCarthy Spirit of Mission Awards. She is the founder and executive director of Stepping Stones Resources, Inc., which promotes action and inspires consciousness about the social, health, economic, and environmental issues that affect local and global communities. Welcome, Wynnie.
Thank you, Karen. Good morning, everyone. Glad to be here.
Next, traveling back to the 80s and traveling all the way to the Philippines, I'd like to welcome Fred Goddard, who was a Maryknoll missioner from 1985 until 1998. He was first served in the Philippines, where he met and married his wife Jet, and then served in Nicaragua. Fred first came to the Philippines as a Peace Corps volunteer. In 1999, Fred became the first lay member of the executive coordinating team of the Maryknoll affiliates, serving in that position until 2012. Fred and Jet returned to the southern Philippines, where Fred works at the Mindanao Peacebuilding Institute in Davao City. Welcome and good evening, Fred.
Thanks. Good evening and greetings from the Philippines.
We also do want to take a moment to hold in prayer the people of Jolo in the Philippines, where there was a bombing this morning. So if we could just pause for a brief moment and remember all those who were affected by that. And then last, but certainly not least, I would like to welcome Liz Mach, who is a native of Pine City, Minnesota. She has served with Maryknoll missioners for 44 years, primarily in Tanzania, but also in other parts of East Africa. Liz is our longest serving Maryknoll missioner. She's worked as a nurse in women's health and for the rights of women in Tanzania and at an international level. Her vocation has been meeting the needs of women and girls in her community, supporting an end to gender-based violence, and working with those impacted by HIV. Also, we want to recognize that Liz will be retiring as a lay missioner from Maryknoll Lay Missioners at the end of this month. So welcome, Liz, and thank you for all of your years of service.
Good morning. Thank you.
Liz, I'd like to actually start off with you as we're diving into some questions here. As you are our matriarch, you have been a missioner for most of our 45 years of history. So I'm wondering, when you joined Maryknoll, what did mission mean to you, and what was your experience like as you entered mission?
Well, thank you so much for the invitation today, and I'm just happy to be here. In 1976, when the Maryknoll Lay Mission Program was just beginning, it was called Maryknoll Lay Mission Program, and it's just in its infant stages. We were very fortunate to be led by three visionaries at the time who worked and modeled Team for All of Us: Father Jack Sullivan, Maryknoll priest, Maryknoll sister Marianne O'Donnell, and Chuck Lathrop, who was a layman. And they truly believed in the call to laity in mission and were enthusiastic leaders in this. We were warmly welcomed to mission in those early years by the Maryknoll Fathers, Brothers, and Lay Missioners, and we lived in traditional Maryknoll parishes at the time. Everything was new to everybody, and so we kind of forged the path together. I remember the women of my first mission in Ndoleleji, Tanzania. We were struggling with the language as we learned Swahili, but the women that we were working with mostly spoke Kisukuma, which is a local language. It's tonal, it's difficult, and sometimes we were just confused as to which language we were hearing, and it could be very frustrating at times. At the same time, the Tanzanians are very warm, they're very welcoming, and they're incredibly hospitable. And where we walked each day, people were always welcoming us. There's always the karibu, karibuni, which means you are most welcome here. And they truly mean it. I really do believe that. And it's expected that you just kind of stop, chat, visit, go into the home for a visit. Now you have to remember, we were type A nurses, and this was a challenge for us, for we felt we had work to do, not time to be stopping by and visiting everybody. But we had to learn that that stopping and that visiting were all part of the cycle of life in Tanzania and expected of us. So the slow down, the visit, enter into the relationship with each person. And relationships are the basis of life in Tanzania for us. And a lesson that I learned long ago and that I think carried me through all of my years in mission.
What you mentioned, Liz, about that slowdown, I think is a lesson for all of us that we can learn from. Juan, next I want to turn to you. You came to mission about 40 years after Liz, so I'm wondering what in her experience resonates with your own journey to Maryknoll.
Well, it's very interesting to hear her story. She's talking 4 years ago in Tanzania, but it happened the same to me in El Salvador a few years back when I was there. The sense of community and relationship is the base of our mission. She was saying it's the base for the life in Tanzania, but I would say it's the base for mission, life, and work. Every time I will walk to visit a neighbor or a friend in El Salvador, I will have to leave an hour before because I knew somebody on the way was gonna stop me to say hi, maybe invite me to eat some mangoes or just play with the kids. There's something between I get to the point I wanted to go. So I learned to live like an hour earlier, and family and friends that visit me there, they know about this. That it's a different kind of life to what we are used to in the US. As Liz was saying, we need to slow down and make community and relationship a priority. I think the miracle of mission flows through relationships. That will be my conclusion.
I love that. The miracle of mission flows through relationships. I think we should tweet that out on all of our social media. Next, Flavio, I want to turn to you because like Juan and recently Liz, you're still living overseas and serving as a Maryknoll lay missioner. Can you tell us a little bit about what mission looks like for you there in João Pessoa?
Right now, we are, of course, adapting to the new situation with the COVID. So our groups are not meeting in person. We are doing a lot of work online, a lot of workshops, meditations, lives, group meetings. Before that, I do Theater of the Oppressed, which is a kind of theater that we go to the communities, to the group, and we build a play based on their situation, their problems. And then we go to the streets. We can go to parishes, schools, to talk about how they live and looking for solutions through theater. And also here in João Pessoa, we have Maryknoll Sisters. And something that really called me to Maryknoll when I met the first Maryknollers was the way that they lived in João Pessoa and that they still live. So I met them in '98 when I moved to João Pessoa to go to college. And the sister and the priest and the lay missioners always worked together in Brazil, the Brazil mission community, respecting each other's vocation but working together. And we, at the time, they still do have a focus on environment, on natural food, on water, and recycling, all these things that were very new for me at that time. So in some ways, they introduced me Laudato Si years before it was published by the Pope. So it's something that really stayed with me. It's the whole thing about caring for the earth, caring for the Mother Earth. And that's something that really I was introduced by the Maryknollers here in João Pessoa.
That's great. I love that Laudato Si was something that was sort of already in your sphere before it was even Laudato Si. Hopefully we can all embrace that more and learn from what you all have already been doing. Next, I'd like to turn, Fred, to you. As we mentioned, you still are overseas and you're in one of your mission countries overseas, but not with Maryknoll. So I'm just wondering how Maryknoll has played a role in where you are today.
Thank you. Listening to both Liz and Flavio especially, it just struck me now that the idea of the Maryknoll family is really probably one of the greatest influences on still being here back in the Philippines after being away for so long. And I would go back to even coming here in 1986 and just remembering Jack Walsh, the priest with whom we worked and who actually was the presider at the wedding of Jed and myself. That he just passed away this year from supposedly from COVID-19, along with some of the other Maryknoll. So it's a changing Maryknoll family as well. It also strikes me, having worked with Chris Bertucci, a Maryknoll lay missioner as well. We were together in the Philippines, went through a lot together. When she was injured, we were brought her to Manila. I was caring for her when she was in the hospital. Now we're working together at the Mindanao Peace Building Institute. She's the director, and I'm working with her along with our Filipino staff and co-workers. So it's that family that has evolved out of the large presence of Maryknoll here in the 70s and 80s to almost no presence whatsoever now in terms of the official Maryknoll presence. But the Maryknoll family still lives on. Maryknoll affiliates who are here, many people who have worked with Maryknoll, and we continue to work with some of them. So it's an evolution of a family. And at the same time, the other thing that strikes me is being influenced by the Maryknoll sisters on the idea of family ministry. So we did that in the US, caring for my mother, and now we've shifted that family ministry to family here in the Philippines. I think it's both that work for justice and peace and working with the pastoral groups here and in Nicaragua, and then returning back here again to continue that work, as well as that family commitment.
I really appreciate this thread that you were all sort of touching on of this idea of relationship and that connection in the Maryknoll family, because I know that was something when I first came to Maryknoll that spoke to me in a special way, to have those connections. For those watching, that if you're just joining us, this is just popping up on your news feed, you are tuning into Global Mission, Then, Now, and in the Future. This is our 45th anniversary panel with Maryknoll lay missioners, and we're talking with some of our missioners around the world about their experiences through the decades. So let us know if you're just tuning in. I have another question for those watching, I guess, as we're talking about these different relationships we've formed. Who is somebody who has really played a part in your journey? Name that person. Let's hold all of those important relationships in prayer throughout our panel. So feel free to drop that in the comments for us. Now, Wynnie, I want to sort of jump over to you. We mentioned how you have returned from mission, but you recently received the Bishop McCarthy Spirit of Mission Award because of how you continue to embody the spirit of Maryknoll in your work here in the United States. Can you tell us a little bit about how your time in Venezuela, I suspect there may be some relationships in there as well, has impacted the work that you're doing here in the United States?
Thank you. First, I'd like to apologize if it's too dark because I turned off the light because I was just melting. It's so hot, it's humid here. So just imagine, that you're in a developing country and there's a power outage. Okay, so now you're actually in mission. If you're having a hard time seeing me, okay. Can everybody hear me? Can you? Okay, good. It's true what everybody said. I experienced the same thing in terms of relationships. It's all about the relationship. And so going to Maryknoll, I wasn't, what your idea, I guess, of what a missioner is. I didn't even consider myself, even when I was in Maryknoll, because I had some issues with the terminology missioner, so you're a missioner, you're in mission because of all the baggage, that it entails, from the history of missioning. And as a person of color, that's something, that we kind of struggled with, in terms of other cultures and other people coming in and imposing their own ideologies, their own culture, their own viewpoint. And so when when Kathy Bond, Flavio's wife, introduced me to Maryknoll, and I saw that the idea was completely different, in terms of the Maryknoll ideology, the Maryknoll mission, so to speak. It was about relationship, and it was about bearing witness, and it was with the option for the poor. And I really love that. And so, I am so proud of my time at Maryknoll. And I still continue, to have links with Maryknoll in terms of my colleagues when I first joined, the candidates, the group I first joined with, and then other Maryknoll that I met throughout my years in Maryknoll, and also overseas in Venezuela. And so when I first went to Venezuela, because I'm not a specialist really in anything. I'm not a doctor, I'm not an engineer, and mostly I was and still am an educator and an activist. And so I went there with the notion of being present, but unobtrusive. So forming relationships, and I didn't even really know exactly what it was I was going to do, and specifically what my work was going to be. And so, it was through meeting people, visiting people, going door to door, talking to people, and just being with them and listening to their stories. And so as I went, from house to house, making all these relationships and meeting people and, breaking bread with them and participating with them in service and, you know, all these things and playing with the kids. And so little by little, you know, then they started to tell me, you know, about their lives. And then I started to see what it was that was needed. But it never came from me, you know, they would always be the one to introduce it. And so we would always figure out something, you know, how we can, you know, provide a solution to the problem. And if not a solution, at least, you know, how to improve it. And did everything in, you know, in terms of teaching. And if it was with a youth group or a women's group and they wanted to read the Bible, and so we would have the Bible studies, and I would try to get them to see the connections between themselves and Mary. So to them, it was sort of blasphemous, you know, are you trying to tell me that I'm like, you know, Mary, the Virgin Mary? And so just trying to make the connection in their lives, you know, to see how, yes, you know, she was a poor woman, you know, and she suffered, she did all these things, you know, that you're going through at the moment, and that you have a lot more in common than you realize. And so little by little, you know, I just became part of, you know, the community. And so I, you know, and they also felt free enough, and it was about trust that, you know, they felt that they can tell me, you know, anything, that they felt free enough to come to me and see that I was actually on their side. And, you know, so I would have things like, for instance, baking class, because in where I lived, it was a red zone, and it was extremely poor people, and quite a few of them had come from rural areas, and then they just made their makeshift homes, you know, with little carbon boxes or corrugated metal, whatever, dirt floors, and you know, whatever they could find, jobs that they could find, menial jobs that they could find, and basically survive. And then so, for instance, something as simple as a birthday party, you know, they would invite me to a birthday party, and then they couldn't even buy a cake because it was so expensive. So then I would make a cake and, you know, and bring it. And so that was my contribution. And so then I started to notice that I got invited to more and more birthday parties because I was making the cakes and they liked the cakes. And so then, you know, it got to be too much. Finally, I said, you know, why don't I have a cake baking class? Something as simple as that. My mother would have been shocked that I even cooked, you know. I started to have a baking class. So then I taught them how to make cheesecake, you know, chocolate cake, carrot cake. And so even now, because I'm still in communication with a lot of them, someone will send me a message via Messenger or WhatsApp asking me, you know, for the chocolate cake recipe. Do I remember? Or, oh, I still remember your carrot cake recipe, you know? And so you think, oh, okay, well, totally meaningless. You know, what does that have to do with mission? But it's through the process, you know, the bonding, you know, and you started to hear about, you know, what was going on with their lives, what was going on with the husband, you know, how come they didn't go to the meeting, you know, because, well, you know, my husband wouldn't let me go to the meeting because he thinks it's putting all these, you know, notions in my head and I am going to leave them. So then now I found out, okay, so how do I get the husband on my side, you know, to let them to participate? So then this was like a really great sacrifice, you know, so I'll go over and have, you know, and bring a beer, 2 beers or something like that, 6-pack, and then we sit down, have a beer, tough, I know, with the husband. And eventually they trusted me enough, and they trusted the wife enough to let her go to these meetings. And so working with the children, starting with a music group, again, all about relationships with the kids, 5, all the way to, 12, 13 years old, and just meeting their parents, meeting a kid whose father was the janitor at the school, who had wanted to start a music group, but because he was the janitor and no one took him seriously, well, yeah, whatever, don't, pay much attention to him. But then when I came along, and then we joined forces, and then we got these kids to form a music group. And eventually they were able to go out and then play at different venues, and make some money. So, so it's definitely all about the relationships and how you build community, and in terms of trust and respect. I'll stop there. I don't know. I've been going on for a while.
I love the story about the cake, Wynnie, because it makes me think of a time when I was in Cambodia and one of my friends wanted to learn how to make cake. But in Cambodia, they put like a mat down on the ground, and that's how they do a lot of their cooking. And so I was using my way of standing at a counter trying to mix things. And my friend just said, this doesn't work. This doesn't work. And so we ended up sitting on my dining room table so then we could be sitting down and cooking, because that to her was how you cooked. So we made a cake while sitting on the table. It's about that adapting to the relationships where you're at. I love it.
Absolutely.
Liz, I want to jump back to you. Before I do that, I just want to put out there for those watching, if you do have questions for our panelists, please feel free to put those in the comments section. Depending on the device you're watching on and whether you're on Facebook or YouTube, the comment section is going to be either below the video or off to the right-hand side. If you have questions for our panelists, put them there and we will do our best to get to them towards the end of the panel. If we're not able to get to everything during our live panel, we will certainly get back to you through the comments after the panel. Now, Liz, I want to jump back to you as we're talking about these experiences of mission, since you've lived through a lot of these changes in mission. And as we're thinking about what comes in the future for Maryknoll Lay Missioners, for mission in general, how has that shifted? How has mission shifted in East Africa in your many years there?
Well, I think Wynnie very eloquently began this whole topic right there about the early mission and the baggage of words and the baggage of what mission was or is, and missioners. And when we had many words, we had accompaniment, we had walking with the people, we had being with the people, being someplace. And we were always arguing over these words and what they meant. But where I feel today is that we are really working with people to really uncover and unfold God's gifts. And we do it together with people wherever we are. We aren't doing it alone, and we aren't bringing only our message. My last years in mission really were not being a nurse, but taking care of folks as we were trying to build a solid foundation for people's voices to be heard. For me, it's the voice of the women and girls as they speak out against the gender-based violence that they face every day, and all the harmful traditions which still control the girl child. We have female genital mutilation, we have child marriages, we have sex trafficking, and they're all still very common. But the strongest advocate for change in today's world is the young women themselves. They don't need someone else speaking about it for them. It's their voice, it's their strength, it's their courage, and that's going to change the world. My support and helping them is just to access make accessible the opportunities for them to really be able to have their voices heard. They're articulate, they have the message. We have to open our ears and our hearts to hear it. And they know the technology, they know how to use the platform. We just have to be there as a support system right now. And I really believe they're going to be the change makers of today, and they're going to be the future mission. As I watch our young people come in and they're strong advocates, I'm really thrilled, and I can say, yeah, it's time for me to step away. It's okay.
That in and of itself takes so much wisdom. It's often hard, I feel, for folks to step away and create space for others. So one of the things that both you and Wynnie have touched on is this idea of, who is in mission? What does that look like? Fred, I want to jump over to you. When I was in Cambodia, I was very lucky that I got to serve with some Filipino lay missioners with a program through the Maryknoll Society. And they came from the country where you served as a missioner. Do you see a shift in terms of mission? What is a mission sending? What is a mission receiving country in the future of mission? And what do you think that could look like?
Yeah, this is the one a question I would struggle with because, well, first of all, just to say that when we were even here in the 1980s, this program, my wife, she was part of helping it get started, and then I worked with them. So it's been around a long time. And Olga Pakumbaba is the one who comes to mind as one who really embodies the Philippine Catholic lay missioners. And we were also fortunate, I would say, that we were also able to visit Cambodia. So we've seen them both here in the Philippines before going. We also was able to meet with them in Venezuela. And then we were also involved here with them. What I struggle with is in looking at it, it came from the society. Now the Maryknoll Fathers and Brothers, then they have evolved their own internal program, so that now it's the Philippine Catholic Lay Mission. And in working side by side and in speaking with some of them, I know there are struggles, and I think it's often a question around privilege. And I don't say that lightly. And I think sometimes, I mean, this is my perspective, that we do have a privilege in being able to go into mission. Whereas the Filipino lay missioners have gone, many of them are coming out of they come from the similar economic and cultural situations to the countries they go to. So if they go to Cambodia, Thailand, Myanmar, they're also facing. So there's some distinctions there that I think we can learn much from in that. And I think even they've gone to Japan, they've served in Hawaii, and going to the US, that mission, the historically mission, including Maryknoll's mission, has been the US going to other countries. I think we're now looking at a world where that needs to change, and that there's a much more mutual relationship that we need to struggle and develop. But it also requires us to face some of our own questions around privilege that we have on different levels. So that's part of what we need to struggle with. And then even in our returning back to the Philippines, in a sense, it is also a different journey for us, because we've come back and we've had to look for work. We're now sort of in that level of, we're on a not-for-profit or NGO kind of salary, or how do we struggle through this? So how do we look at ways that we sort of begin to struggle with the privileges, look at our privileges, and how do we work with people, knowing that, especially when we're going to be working alongside others who we see being, again, this language of mission, but being in mission with us or being in mission together.
There's so much that you all are sharing that makes me want to just have a whole nother panel where we tackle these ideas about language and mutuality, because I think there's a lot there to unpack. Flavio, I want to shift over to you, because you are sort of one of our exceptions. You're not yet in the majority within Maryknoll Lay Missioners of a person who is in mission in their birth country. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about how does that impact your work as a missioner, and what do you see that, or how do you see that playing a role in the future of mission?
Yeah, it's quite different, because I'm a minority in the group, but I'm the majority outside of the group. And I did the opposite way of the missioners who came from the US. I had to learn the culture, and Maryknoll has its own culture, a different culture of doing mission. And the Brazil community, the Marginal Brazil community, also has its own culture, which is different from other groups where Marginal is present. So it is different. I had to learn a lot. Of course, we have challenges, conflicts in terms of spirituality, pastoral, how to work in group. But in Brazil, just imagine that just here in João Pessoa, we have 4 Marginal sisters and 2 lay missioners, 6 people in the Brazil community, and 6 different countries. So we really need to dialogue. And also with the community in São Paulo, we have people from different countries. So when we do our assembly, it needs to have a lot of dialogue and patience, knowing that we challenge each other. On the other hand, that's so rich to have this diversity. And really, the future of mission is that it's having a diverse group. There is no other way. I don't see any other way. So we say that we do mission to ourselves and mission to the people who we work with. I always think like Wynnie and Fred and Lee said, that we are not the voice of the voiceless, because people have their voice. They have their own voice. They are not heard for political reasons, for different interests, but they have their own voice. And we see that once in a while, people really have to scream to be heard in different ways, because they haven't been heard for so long. So really, the future of mission is having diverse in the groups. Otherwise, you have to remember, if you look in terms of agriculture, when you have monoculture, you have pests, you need pesticides. And we don't want this in a group. And we see how groups who don't got diversity, they ended up dying. Because we really need people with different thinking, different spirituality, different ways to express themselves in mission, to be in dialogue. I always think that the place where we go have a lot of diversity too. Usually people think, oh, we go to this place and they have this culture. We go to the Philippines and people, they are like this, or the Brazilians are like this. That's not the truth. If you look at the US, there is so much cultural diversity in the US itself. You cannot compare people who grew up in the rural area of the South with people who grew up in a big city in the North. There are different people. It's the same everywhere. So we really need this diverse to keep mission alive.
Thank you for that, Flavio. I really appreciate what you raised about that there are no people that are voiceless. Everyone has a voice. There are a lot of us that might choose not to listen, but everyone has a voice if we just pause to listen to it. I love that. Juan, I want to shift over to you as we're talking about the future of mission. You are our youngest panelist, so by proximity, you are closest to the future of mission. So I'm just curious, what is your hope for what the future of mission will look like?
Well, my hope, and I try to be down to earth with my dreams and hopes. I think we are living in a faith and spiritually awakening period. I don't know if it's going to be 5, 10, 100 years, but I think we're in that period where we as a species are awakening to something else than just the material life we have around. So with this faith and spiritual awakening period that we're living through, I think we're gonna see a lot of changes. And one of those changes is that we are gonna see that our way of life is as exact reflection or a mirror of our faith life. In this, I say, in my spiritual journey and my own experience, my faith as I grew up was just like a Sunday thing, going to one place and doing the right things. And that was my faith. But when I traveled for the first time on a mission trip to Dominican Republic, I felt at that moment when I had my personal encounter with Jesus, my faith and my spirituality was awakened. And with this, I realized that the way I live, the things I do, it's a reflection of my beliefs and my faith. Where I'm going with this, and I think Pope Francis has been a great advocate of this, is like we as a lay people, the laity, are called to take a bigger role on the church. We are called to live out our faith and follow Jesus' examples of life. I think as time goes on, the laity is going to take a bigger role on the church. We know that religious vocations are decreasing in many parts of the world. Therefore, we are called to increase our participation and our devotion and our life to do what we think is right. It's not just a matter of surviving or a matter of getting the stuff we need to live. It's about something more transcendent than our life and our privileges. It's more about the common good, as the Pope Francis says in Laudato Si. It's about caring for our common house. It's about building a society where the main focus is the common good of all of us, not just my personal comfort. So I would like to take Liz's word because they were very meaningful to me. Is as we uncover and unfold God's gifts within us, and we put it to the service of others and those who are most in need, it creates a ripple effect. That means it helps them to uncover and unfold God's stuff within them, and then they're gonna put it onto the service of other people who need it. I don't want to go too long with this, but I would like to put an example like my actual ministry. Given the quarantine we have faced here in Bolivia and a strict lockdown, we live for a long period, about 3 months. We started a ministry with my fellow missioner, Courtney. It was preparing a hot lunch every day for the homeless. And it created a ripple effect, which surprised me. Like we never expected to happen, but it did. And that's like God's way of working. People around us just started to help out without us asking. They will drop out food, and then some people started dropping off clothes for the homeless, and we were not asking for that, but we received them and we hand them out to them. Recently, one of the churches was interested, so they let us use their kitchen, and some more volunteers are coming in to cook. And it created a ripple effect of others being able to serve to their own people, not just us doing the work, but they also are chipping in and they're pretty much taking over on this ministry. So it's been a blessing and an example of what I'm trying to say. As we live with love and try to express that through actions, other people are gonna take that in and be touched by that, and they're gonna do it themselves too. So this is where I see the future of mission happening, not just as a mission organization, but we are all called to be missioners in our workplace, in our family, with our friends, everywhere.
That's beautiful. For those watching, I'm wondering if you will share with us in the comments where you feel you've sort of been hit by those ripples. Where are you called to serve in mission, whether it's in your home country or elsewhere? What's sort of moving within you? Wynnie, I want to now shift back over to you. You right now are very deeply rooted in the US reality, but you continue to very much be informed by a global reality. many of the things I think your fellow panelists are sharing. So I'm wondering what your sense is of how those two will come together and attract folks here in the US or in other parts of the world to Global Mission, or the Global Mission dream that's been described by Juan and Flavio and Liz and Fred.
Yes. Yeah, this question had me pondering. I was wondering, actually, what does it look like? And so, I agree with Flavio in terms of diversity. It has to be more diverse, absolutely. And even here in the US, when you look at various nonprofit organizations and you look at the leadership, and it's always the majority white. And also sometimes, they'll say that they're diverse by putting a person of color into some position, but that person of color isn't, I guess, rooted in the reality of the grassroots, of the base, of what is it in reality that's going on. And so it's, right now, especially with COVID and, everything that's going on, it's hard to see what this new reality will look like. And so based on my experiences here in Jersey, and then sometimes working in New York also, I always try to look to the past, for my past experiences, and, take the good parts, and hopefully make wise decisions, so that I can apply it to whatever work that I'm doing here. And so right now, my main focus has been environmental justice. In Newark here, which is a majority people of color city, and majority low income also city, you find that 8 out of 10 waste incinerators, in the US, first of all, are in low income community of colors, color communities. And, we're just bombarded by all sorts of pollutants. And, with the climate change, so everything that's going on in terms of educational issues, health disparities, income disparities. And so it may be also, as Juan said, in terms of the local, a lot of, call for everybody to be missioners, for everybody to come in, and do their part basically. And unfortunately, sometimes it's hard because people see other organizations as competitions. There's the competition for funding, competition for people, competition for leadership. And so that gets in the way of the actual mission, of the objective, what it is that we're really supposed to be focusing on. So it creates a lot of distraction. And so in terms of, Maryknoll, the role, that Maryknoll could play is in, base, because I learned so much during my time in Maryknoll that, applying it to my work here in the United States, lots of times I find myself saying, I can't believe they're just now finding out about this, because with Maryknoll, we've been doing this, for the longest time. Even something as simple as listening to what the people are saying, as Flavio said, they have voices. The people have voices, but no one is listening. They hear what they say, but they're really not listening. So they go based on whatever their experiences are, or whatever theory, that they come up with, and try to impose it on the people and say, oh, okay, no, this is the new theory. This is what works, when in reality, the people already have the language, So it's like the dialogue, the communication, it's like, it's missing. So we're not listening to each other. We're not really communicating. It's just imposing my point of view, And then this is what you have to do because I know better. You know, nobody's actually listening. And so I think, you know, in terms of marital, in terms of mission, whatever, you know, you call it objective, activism, advocacy. And a lot of these organizations, they have a lot to learn from Marinol. Now, again, will they listen? You know, will they apply it? Who knows? I've been in groups, you know, with academia, you know, some other people where they're talking, you know, they come with this lingo. Oh, this, so Professor so-and-so says, you know, with this theory of change, blah, 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 auto, blah, 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 and such. And, you know, and they'll say it, long, complicated paper, some white paper, 30 pages, whatever. And then, you know, I'll read it and then I'll say, but you can say this basically in, you know, 2 paragraphs or a paragraph, or the people already have known about this. You know, it's not called this long, winded, complicated lingo. You know, it's just this, you know, the Hemes principle, you know, a bunch of people of color, they came, you know, they got together, came up with it, and based on their experiences. So we have to let, you know, people of color take the lead. And it's hard for a lot of people. And again, it comes with the trust factor, you know, and also the imposition. I know more than you. I've been at this longer than you. No, actually, in terms of the experience, you haven't had the experience like other people. So I'm, you know, still grappling with that, exactly what it's going to look like. Who knows? A lot of brainstorming, a lot of dialogue, and then eventually, you know, we'll come with the answer. Who knows?
That's the hope, right? And then the answer will evolve and change again as we listen some more.
Yep.
I think what all of you are saying brought up another one of those controversial words in my head, that is conversion, and is oftentimes spoken in spheres of mission. But I know for us within Marian Lay Missioners, we talk about that of it's self-conversion. It's how are we converted by the encounters we have, the relationships, the people. And what you were all saying just kept bringing that up again and again for me. For all of you who are watching, I would just offer, if you feel moved to share in the comments, what is one word, what is one phrase, what is something that really stuck out to you? I know I just kept saying, yes, yes, you probably see me here nodding as each of you were talking, because what you were saying was really moving for me and just gives me great hope for the future. As we come to a close, I'm wondering if each of you could just give us sort of one sentence, what gives you hope right now? We're in a trying time in the world and in our country. So for each of our panelists, if you could give us one sentence, what gives you hope in this moment?
I'll start. Generation Z. We're an awesome group of kids.
I see some mouths moving. Remember, y'all are muted too.
I would say
For
just
me,
all coming together and working together is what's important.
for me, the resilience of the Bolivian people, coming together and helping, as Liz was saying, to help those who are even more in need.
For me, I would say we work with grassroots peace builders from all over the world, and I just hold incredible hope in these people who are working at the community level, national level, just to building peace.
I have a lot of hope on the young people, their creativity, their commitment to integrate all different parts, not just the think about the humans, but also about nature and art, spirituality. It's so amazing to see how a lot of these young people are able to integrate all different parts.
Thank you to all of you for speaking with us today on this panel. It's been an amazing hour to spend with you, and we thank you for giving up that time and for all of the gifts and talents you've provided over the years to mission, whatever that means to you, wherever it is that you find yourself. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for everybody who joined us, who is watching this. We did want to share a couple of sort of updates with you. One, just to let you know about an upcoming event. Kathy Bond has gotten a few shout outs on here. That's Flavio's wife and the one who helped bring Wynnie to mission. She has an event coming up on Saturday, August 29th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. If that's something you are interested in, the information's right there on your screen. You can send her an email at kbond@mklm.org. If you want to keep hearing from missioners, we're here every Monday at 11 a.m. with our Meet a Missioner Monday series. And then we want to invite you to be a part of the future of mission with us. One of our other missioners, Sammy Scott, oftentimes says some of us give to mission by going, like the folks that have been on the panel today, and some of us go to mission by giving. So if you would like to be a part of our future through your giving, we appreciate your support, and it helps us to honor this 45th anniversary. There's a link there on your screen as to where you can donate. We also always appreciate your prayers, especially in these trying times, and know that we are thinking of you. So again, thank you. And because this is an anniversary celebration, I feel like no anniversary celebration would be complete without a toast. So if you have a drink near you, hopefully, it's a water bottle or tea or coffee, unless you're Fred and it's the middle of the night for you, we would like to offer you to raise your glass. And I just want to propose a toast to all of those who are out causing those ripple effects that Juan talked about. Here's to a more just and compassionate world. Take care, everyone.